everyone. We'll now call the Tuesday, November 19th Common Council regular meeting to order. Please silence all computers and cell phones. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Allen, take the roll call, please.
Mr. Beatry?
Present.
Ms. Carnes?
Present.
Mr. Dabney?
Present.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Present.
Mr. Hamilton?
Present.
Mr. Przwolinski? Don Przwolinski?
Present.
Mr. Paul Przwolinski?
Present.
Mr. Simmons?
Present.
And Mr. Stemley?
Present.
We have 9 present and no one absent.
Thank you, Ms. Nyland. Everyone has received a copy of the minutes from the regular meeting on November the 6th. Are there any corrections, deletions, motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Support. Second. Motion to approve by Councilman Hamilton and seconded by Councilman Fitzpatrick. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. Reports of standing committees. Councilman Dabney.
All right, November 19th, Finance Committee meeting minutes. Finance Committee meeting was called to order at 6:06 p.m. by Chairman Dabney to review claims filed since our last meeting. Committee members Fitzpatrick and Przwolinski were present, as well as council members Carnes, Simmons, and Beatry. City Controller Rich Murphy and Attorney Jim Meyer were also in attendance. Claims review tonight totaled $3,815.57 from the Riverboat Fund and $26,961.42 from the Boyd Development Fund, for a total docket of $30,766.99. There were no other issues, outstanding issues to discuss. Councilman Przwolinski moved to recommend approval of the docket, and with a second from Councilman Fitzpatrick, the motion was approved and the docket was approved unanimously. On a motion, made by Councilman Przwolinski and a second by Councilman Fitzpatrick, the meeting was adjourned at 6:08 p.m. Hang on a second. I have 2 separate numbers in my actual account. I want to make sure I'm reading the right one here. 42. That's right. Okay. The summary of claims are as follows. From the Riverboat Fund, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, $557.62. Jacob Kubab, $119.17. Simply File, $33. The News Dispatch, $952.33. Kevin Vost, $133.45. Community Crossing Correction of $2,000. Total Riverboat Fund of $3,815.57. From Boyd Development, we had Primera Engineers Limited, $12,358.54. We Create Media, $14,602.58, for a total from the Boyd Development of $26,961.42. And once again, a total claim docket of $30,776.99. And that concludes the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Councilman. I don't believe there's any other reports of standing committees, and I do not believe there's any reports of special or select committees this evening. That brings us to reports of other city officers and department heads. And tonight, Mr. Carl Riddle, our Human Rights Director, is going to address the council on where we stand with the hiring ordinance thus far in 2019. Evening, Mr. Riddle.
Good evening. Carl Riddle, Executive Director, Human Rights for the City of Michigan City. I would like to extend greetings to the Michigan City Common Council, Mayor Ryan Meir, Mayor-elect Dwayne Perry, newly elected members of the Common Council, and residents of our great city. I stand before you to ask for your fiscal and legislative support on an initiative that will promote the enforcement of local hiring ordinance requirements. I, along with members of the Hiring Oversight Committee, have listened to the concerns of our citizens, general contractors, and union representatives in an effort to find a solution to the lack of employment opportunities for our residents. Tonight, I will introduce the citizens of Michigan City to the concept of global project tracking that is currently implemented in a nearby municipality and imposed upon many of the same contractors that derive financial gain from our municipal contracts. It is my desire to effectuate change that will enforce the accurate reporting of data, stimulate contractor and union support of workforce development training initiatives, and promote the actual employment of residents by contractors. The Michigan City Human Rights Department is tasked with administrating the city's contract compliance equal employment opportunity program and establishing procedures to effectuate the program. To determine compliance with municipal contracts, this department relies on the timely and accurate reporting of data by contractors in order to effectively assess the employment opportunities afforded to residents of our city. Currently, I am monitoring 10 municipal contracts for compliance with local hire ordinance valued in excess of $5,777,000. Of those contracts, only one has reached a 50% employment goal as agreed to in terms of those contracts. Our current system of compliance monitoring is antiquated and misleading. It is performed manually and needs to be upgraded to a digital format. At this time, I would like to introduce Miss Alicia Garcia, President of Trinol Incorporated, as well as her Chief Operating Officer, Melissa Williams, who will give a visual presentation on project tracking. And I would also like to introduce Ms. Esperanza Ramirez, who is the compliance manager for the City of East Chicago and is here to answer any questions about the implementation of the Global Project Tracking System at this time.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I just want to thank the council for having us here today. It's very exciting. Just a little background regarding myself. Again, I'm Alicia Garcia Abner. I'm a Hoosier. I was born in East Chicago, Indiana, some time ago. Not going to date it. But I've been in business for a little over 22 years. We're a diversity and inclusion consulting firm, although we're located in Chicago, Illinois. Just a little bit about my background is I was a contract negotiator for the City of Chicago under Harold Washington. I was a baby when I started. I was then promoted and was the Director of Certification for the city's MBE, WBE, and DBE program. And when Mayor Daley took over Chicago Public Schools, I went over as the Director of Contracts Management. So my background is that in procurement as well as affirmative action related programs. While I still had a little energy left, I decided to start my own business. And as I mentioned, we've been in business for 22 years. Couldn't do this by myself, brought some of the best and the brightest over with me, one of them being Melissa Williams, who's also from East Chicago, Indiana. I'll let her give briefly a little bit of background about herself.
Hello everyone, Melissa Williams. I have been with Alicia for 13 years. I am a baby. So prior to joining the team, I was an RF engineer for Motorola. So those signals that's responsible for getting your cell phones to work, that's what I did. So Alicia, she always had a software that she needed to monitor the effectiveness of the programs that she monitored. So she started off in Excel, went from Excel to Access, and from Access she wanted to go web-based because of the change of time. So she brought me on board to work with the developers to take industry practice, interpret it to the software. So that's what I do with her.
Yeah, she's doing well. So as I mentioned, again, we've been in business for 22 years. We assist our clients in developing their programs, monitoring facilitating and reporting on their programs. Some of our clients include the Illinois Sports Facility Authority, Public Building Commission. We've worked with Cook County on their project. We work with a number of large general contractors, as well as, and we have our guest here from East Chicago, Indiana. We worked with the city of South Bend as well as Gary, Indiana. So in the nonprofit sector, you'll see Rush University Medical Center, where we assisted them in developing their program for that huge hospital that was almost $1 billion that you can see when you go off the expressway. So again, what we bring to the table and our clients is our experience, and also in assisting them and giving them guidance when they have certain ordinances or regulations that they may have. Okay. Now, we're going to go into the demonstration of the GPTS, but before we do that, and GPTS is a global project tracking system, as Melissa mentioned, we needed a tool. The tool tracks diversity spend as well as workforce hiring. So if you're only using one component, that's fine. For purposes of your city, we're looking at utilizing it to track your workforce hiring component based on your ordinance. I must say, however, that your ordinance is a little different than what we generally see. Yours is based on wages, where generally you'll see that most municipalities and entities, even on the private sector side, will base their hiring program on the hours. So for instance, the city of Chicago, 50% of the total workforce labor hours are with Chicago residents. As you can see that with East Chicago, as you can also see it in the private sector, where we utilize that same standard with, if you're familiar with Mariano's, which is a grocery chain, when Bob Mariano's was there, as well as a number of the entities in Chicago and here in East Chicago. So just something to kind of think about, particularly given that yours is based on wages, it could be a challenge. With it being on wages and it's 50% if you have one individual in there and they're a superintendent and they're making the most of those wages, and then what's left is maybe the 50%, which you're dividing that 50% and it's really 25%, so really 2/3 have not been realized by your residents here. Might want to look more into the hours, because then you're promoting having more people on board and working. And those hours too will assist in your developing programs that you can work with the unions as far as making sure that they're having hiring halls that are available for certain hours, for certain classifications, okay? So again, just something to think about. And we proposed in our proposal to the city that I would provide you with some consulting hours as well, just to get some feedback based on my experience and what we know that is general industry practices, okay? So Melissa's gonna show you the dashboard.
So I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I need to be at the computer as well to speak. So this is the project, the Global Project Tracking System. It is a web-based solution where it allows contractors to enter in their payroll data. Once that information is entered in, whatever your workforce initiatives may be, in addition to your current ordinance, you'll be able to track and monitor based off of the data that has been entered. So I have actually logged into the system, and you're seeing it from a client's view. So the view that if Carl would be utilizing the system, he would see. So it's basically key metrics showing you a snapshot of where you're at with your overall diversity initiatives. Now, the dashboard is customizable, so depending on what your initiatives are, it will be customized to fit your need. So as the contractors are entering in data, we are able to produce over 40-something reports. I will not go over all of them, but just some of the key reports that are produced is your EEO Weekly. So as contractors are entering in information, Carl will be able to see all of the contractors that have entered in their certified payroll data, all of the weeks ending, those total hours, and then those total hours are broken out by journeymen, apprentices, and laborers. And then from that, those hours are even broken out even further into the minority and female hours. From There also will be entering in wage information. So depending on the wage determination that is applicable for that project, as the contractors are entering in that information, Carl will also be able to see if they are in compliance with paying the employees according to the appropriate wages. So this report is called the prevailing wage. So be it Davis-Bacon, prevailing, or union wages, all of those contractors that are in violation, the report will list those contractors, those individuals that were affected, the week ending, and then the restitution amount that is owed to them. And then we have another report, and this is a key report, and I kind of like it a lot, but this is the locale report. It really shows you the demographics of the workforce and what's really going on site. It lists all of the contractors that have performed work, all of the individuals, and then it breaks out the demographics by gender, race and ethnicity, where they reside, their locale, so it can even break it out into the ward that they live in, the trade, when they were hired the first time and the last time they appeared on the payroll, and that is equated to how many days and hours, and then the total dollars that were paid according to the payrolls. That's all. Okay.
And as Melissa mentioned, we have over 40 reports in there. I just couldn't help myself. When you're a compliance professional, you pretty much know a number of different scenarios that you may need a report for. So I kept putting them in. Because when I worked for the city, I get a call on a Friday, and it would be about 3 o'clock from the mayor's office, and they would be asking for a report, and they knew we did not have it. So then we'd work on it all weekend, and on Monday when we'd have the report, and I'd say I got the report, they'd say, okay, what report? I said, okay, this isn't going to happen to me again. When I went on a private sector side, I said, I'm going to have all of those what ifs, and we have a lot of those what ifs in our system. Again, given that we are compliance professionals, we provide services as well as we have a tool. We just wanted to make sure that if our clients had staff such as Carl here you have, that they have a tool so that they could make sure that they could monitor and report to see exactly what's going on. This kind of information is critical. It's not just telling you if someone is meeting their goals. This information will assist you in developing programs for individuals and determining skill sets, because you'll know the abundance of folks that you may have in one particular skill set. You may not see people working in iron trades. Then you have this data, you go to the union, you say, you know what? Opening up that hall once a year is not going to make it. And also when you have language in your contracts for the contractors that are saying that you have these goals in there, then you put them in a position where even though they're a signatory to the union, they still have to meet your goals. That makes it open for the unions to want to cooperate, because it's their responsibility to find the contractors, qualified folks that can fill that position. So it's all circular. And again, the data is important and will assist you in determining if you want to continue to go forth with your current ordinance or if you might want to make some modifications to the ordinance. I'm leaving Carl today with a copy of the Chicago Residency Ordinance. I see that yours have a penalty of about $2,500 first time, $7,500 second time. Frankly, as I mentioned to you, my background is that being a contract negotiator, working in procurement, they generally put that in. Okay, that's not really a penalty. What you want to do is encourage them so that they're sponsoring people into the unions to build up your trades, and you're going to have more of an economic impact. And when you're looking at the majority of the hours as opposed to maybe your wages, that then you're affording more opportunities for folks to get out there, get the experience, maybe start off as a laborer, work to be an apprentice, and look to being a journeyman. But based on the data, when you have that data, then you can, give you a guideline for developing those kind of programs. Okay. Any questions?
Councilman Dammy?
All right. Just going to put this out here in the discussion in Michigan City about our hiring ordinance and what it does and does not do. And when it all comes back, everybody I've talked to, it all always boils down to race. All right, I'm just cutting through all the other stuff. We're getting down to race. And every attorney that I've talked to said you cannot, by law, tell somebody they have to have this percentage of people, by race to hire and certain things like that. But looking over this ordinance now for the 4 years I've been on the council, I see no reason why we can't incentivize people to hire numbers by race. I'm just giving an example. And I'm going to bounce this idea off you. I've talked about it up here a couple of times, never in depth like I'm about to talk about this idea. But what I've thought is that if we set certain goals, and like I said, this is an example, so don't go run and print this in the paper and say this was,
Just talking.
Just talking, there you go. So let's just say our demographics of our city. I don't know the percentages, let's say 35% Caucasian, and break it down like that. If a company meets, let's say 3 out of the 5 incentives that we put forward, like you have so many women, you have so many, African Americans and things like that, you become what's called a preferred vendor, so to speak. So it's not, like I said, you cannot say by law you have to hire a certain amount of people, but you incentivize. If your company meets these qualifications and mine does not, we both bid on $1 million contract, so this is just an idea I've been throwing around. So you bid $1 million, I bid $1 million. Yours counts for $950,000 versus mine that does not. My bid still counts as $1 million. So if you meet these qualifications, you don't have to. You don't have to play the game. But if you do, you get a preferred bid, so to speak.
Well, the city of East Chicago is using a similar formula that's a canvassing formula, but it's not breaking it down by race and ethnicity, and so does the city of Chicago. I'll let Esperanza. Okay, so with that as your scenario, if you commit to a certain percentage of minorities in the categories of journeymen, apprentices, and laborers, and women in those categories, then you can be afforded a bid credit. And that credit may mean you're $1 million, I'm $1 million. I did commit to utilizing minorities and women. You didn't. That formula equated to me being at about $970,000. You're still $1 million. I would be awarded the contract, but I would also be given liquidated damages relative to any deficiencies that I may not make. Now I got your math.
There you go.
So that is utilized over in Chicago, and it is utilized in East Chicago. But let me just ask you this: do you receive federal funds?
I'm referring to we award our city contracts.
Any federal funded projects?
I would imagine we have federal funded projects as well.
Okay, so if you look at the regulations relative to federal funds, you'll see that there's generally a percentage that is required in a certain county for the utilization of minorities and women. For instance, in the city of Chicago, it is 19.6% for minorities, 6.9% for women. Although that's not breaking it down, but also the federal regulations also stipulates that a contractor is to meet that in every category, every trade category. It also mentions that it is an expectation that it be reflected evenly, meaning that an African American company is not expected to come in with all African Americans, that it should be even out, as well as Caucasians are not supposed to come in with all Caucasians, that it should be reflected and it should be distributed evenly. So in that instance, that's where you see some language relative to ensuring that there is some representation across the board and not one-sided. Now, what the collection of data could do easily, if you look at the federal regulations under affirmative action, but not under construction right now, but under affirmative action for professional services, it breaks it down to different categories based on race, and there is a formula in there. Now, once you start collecting data, and you see what is practicable, then you could introduce and perhaps work with your local Office of Federal Contract Compliance, and that is the federal office, and looking at determining some numbers so that you can say in African Americans, we see this, we'd like to get this goal, Hispanics this goal, Asians this goal, Native American this goal. Okay, but again, even if you set goals, we have to look at what is available. What is the skill set? We don't want to have something that's not practicable and we're enforcing it on our contractors and there isn't anyone out there. So all of this has to be connected with your local universities, like your technical, maybe your Ivy Tech schools, also with the unions. I don't know if you have Job Corps here. Job Corps is one of the only sanctioned union apprentice programs from the ages of 16 to 24. The one in Chicago at the Paul Simon, they have a large, their areas, is carpentry and in the finishing trades. It's like a university there. They can stay. It's no cost. But when they graduate, those credits transfer over into the union's apprentice programs. So we can look at having some sort of program like that here, working with the union, seeing if they will extend and have a Job Corps center here. Again, you want to have the facilities, so when you want to eliminate excuses, and that's what we're all about. Not the excuse of the contractor pointing and saying it's the union and the union pointing to the contractor, okay? But actually having facilities so that we can get people trained. And then you want to leverage this. You don't want to work in silos. And that's what government has a tendency to do, to look at one particular project and what can we achieve here. But look at some of your other agencies here, your other departments, and see how you can keep people from working not toward unemployment, but a continuity of employment. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yes, you did. And so now my final question is, which one of you do I set up a meeting with to discuss what I'm talking about here?
I'd love to meet with you.
Okay. That's why I came down and grabbed the business card. I saw this and immediately came down there and grabbed business cards. So I'll be reaching out to you to talk about my ideas and what I think about this.
Information is power.
Because I don't want to be where I penalize people.
No.
But I think there's some equitable ways to do some things here.
And you can give them some incentives as to doing things, as in maybe having an internship program, a student apprenticeship program, even a mentor protege program where folks could be given credit or consideration. And we can talk about that.
Thank you.
Okay?
Councilwoman Carnes?
I have a question just specifically about the application itself. So when you're dealing with residency, does it track residency strictly based on the address of the employee, or is there some sort of GIS mapping involved in that as well?
Well, currently the system is connected with Google. So the contractor is allowed to enter in that employee's address, and it has to be valid. And from there, it can validate that address based off of the city and the state.
See, the issue here in Michigan City is that people will have Michigan City addresses, but they are not residents of Michigan City. They utilize the post office, and there are several towns, Beverly Shores, I think, definitely Michiana Shores and Long Beach, where they're not actually residents of the city, but their address is Michigan City. How could the software somehow deal with that?
Currently, the software is picking up addresses only, but if you want to be able to open it up to P.O. boxes, we can do that, but it's based off of the address.
No, it's not P.O. boxes. These are street addresses that say they're Michigan City, but are actually not in the city limits. Is there any way that it could?
Right. Within the system, you would give us the parameters, and then our developer will work with those parameters. So whereas when the contractors are entering in that information, they will not be able to move forward.
So there would be a custom development.
Also, I'm sorry, my name is Esperanza. I'm calling from the City of Chicago. I'm the compliance manager for the city. I do more verification. I ask for like bills from like NIPSCO, Comcast, those kind of things. I use several methods into verifying that they actually are residents and that they reside here. So,
And it still would not solve this problem.
well,
because,
I also work with their HR department as well to get verification if
this
they
would
are or not.
this would have to tie in like a mapping function.
Right. In the system, once you enter the information, it'll first verify if the person is, or if that's a valid address. And then from there, what I do on my own, I ask for information verified. And sometimes we'll have someone go, if this is personal investigation, have a police officer go and investigate, see if the person's actually living there or not, to verify if that person actually lives there.
It's still not does not address my question. I mean, these are valid addresses, but they're not in the city limits.
Okay.
And it legitimately says Michigan City, but it is not in the city limits. It would have to be tied in to some sort of map, GIS.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And that would be a custom development package. Okay, thank you.
And the other thing is, when you're doing site visits, there is a component in the system to allow for site visits, so that you can go, you can interview folks, you can look at their IDs as well. But again, if you're saying that their driver's license is saying Michigan City, we just need to know what those parameters are. Okay.
Is there any kind of estimate on what sort of upcharge there would be to link a GIS to this and do that custom package?
With GIS matter, you would just have to give us the parameters and.
I mean, to tie it into your
Yeah.
Right,
application.
we have infrastructure that's there already.
Okay,
so we have
okay.
a upcharge.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Beatry?
Did I understand you to say that all of the data that is entered into your system is entered by contractors?
Yes.
So no unions are involved and no one from the city is involved. It's all, has that been problematic in any way?
Yes.
Sorry. Currently, what we do is in East Chicago, we bestow the responsibility and make them accountable, because since they're signatory clients as well as statement of compliance managers go on site, and they're the ones who approve all the hours and all the workers and employees who worked on the job. And when that gets approved, then the data gets captured and formulated, and it starts plugging into the other reports. That's how we do it in East Chicago. And I myself help prep the entire profile for each project and each contract. I put all the different percentages in which was agreed upon during bid awarding, and any other information. There are two components that we use. There's a formula that we have for minority, and there's another formula we use for residential.
So short answer is it has not been a problem.
No, just when the original setup and how they enter the information. That's why Melissa has a 1-hour learning session with all contractors. We've made it mandatory for all the contractors to undergo their learning session, so that way they're familiar and they have an account.
Okay.
But no, so far, no, we haven't had a problem.
Because the contractors, they're used to we work with the project accountants, so they are used to having to prepare payroll anyway, so it's just transferring the information out of their financial system into ours. So it hasn't been a problem.
And it generates a certified payroll report. So that's been helpful for a number of small businesses that might still be using Excel spreadsheets, and we were desperately trying to get them away from that. But it generates like 4 different types of certified payroll reports that then they sign to make it in compliance. But to say if there's any problems, we've had people call and say, I can't make my printer print, but that's not necessarily a GPTS issue. You have, when you're doing change and people aren't used to it, may have some pushback. But once they see how we've tried to make it as user-friendly as possible, remember those yellow and black books that we have out there? I'm not going to say, but for the computer challenged, we tried to make it. But again, once they get into the rhythm of it, we're assisting in their capacity growth. Because if they're going to go beyond even the city, entities are utilizing and capturing information electronically. Okay.
One thing I do want to mention that it's a great repository system, and I mean that in sincere, because there is a tab for everything, and it is a wonderful tool to calculate I enter all my change orders. I enter all my payments that have been done and have been approved or denied. I've entered any new information as far as any clients is concerned. There's a way to be able to monitor all the general contractors, excuse me, and subcontractors or subprime. And it's just a really nice tool where everything is nicely organized. And if there's any problems, you can hurry up and ask the system to produce a report. I can upload notes. I can upload the bid, the actual bid contract agreement, notice to proceed, notice to award, all those documents that were involved as far as making sure that the particular project was assured, and what documentation, who are all the parties that are involved and responsible in approving any payroll, or who are all the project managers that are involved. Because, and depending on how much level of access you want to give those individuals will depend how much accessibility they have. Like the payroll managers and the signatory person can see everything because they're the ones who are approving the payroll. They are approving or overlooking all the change orders, and they're looking and being able to see all the process as far as payments and invoices that have been submitted to the city.
Thank you, Esperanza. I'm full. Because it's good when you develop something and we're passionate about what we do, and in knowing what it is that it takes for a compliance officer, and when you keep them strapped at their desks trying to get together data, then that takes them away from going out there, establishing those relationships, doing that networking that is important. And that's one of the reasons why, being a compliance professional, why we developed this, because we wanted to develop programs. We want to be able to implement programs. And this is definitely going to help. And thank you, Esperanza has helped her. And it's definitely going to help Carl. And again, maybe even to rethink your current program and what you might want to do differently, and how we can impact the citizens here in your city, because there is a lot going on and we want to keep people employed. You know, you just want to keep them employed. So
This used to be a manual process for me, and this year I'm so grateful that we finally found Trinal, and it's been very effective. I handle at least 25 jobs, and I'm overseeing city and state projects. And I can't tell you how instrumental it is to keep everything organized and that I can upload all the information. I'm overseeing between $24 and $46 million alone in this year. And I've been able to recover I've already closed like 8-9 projects, and we're talking about at least $500,000 per training.
thank you. Any other questions?
I just had one question. I know we're this a little bit different, but say with the bidding, when you have the contractors, the list of contractors, do you use this procedure? Say if you have a sidewalk project or anything else, of everybody you have that would do this contract, that you could send it out to them to bid on these programs or projects?
Oh, you're talking about like an outreach component?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, we don't. But what we do have is, if you're utilizing a directory of MBEs, WBEs, or local businesses, okay, we can upload that directory, and then it will demonstrate to you. It'll break it down by category. If you need electrical, if you need plumbers, that will assist you in sending out notices to your contract.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Przeminski.
I just want to comment one more thing, is that some of the projects that I've covered are very large in scale, where I mean that you have your general contractor, and I'll have like 17 or 18 subcontractors, and you're making sure to try to receive all the certified payroll from all these individuals as well as contracts. But some of these major contracts have sublet some of the other projects, which will make them, depending on what our ordinance entails and if they qualify, will have sometimes their own smaller ordinances and compliance requirements that they would need to follow. Just like one project I had in particular that had the subprime, but they sublet some of the other projects like plumbing, electricity, HVAC, and they had their own compliance requirements. So we had to also follow their own agenda, and the payroll, certified payroll, everything. So I mean, what can be a small process in doing it manually, if you have a very large job, and depending how complex it is, it can get very ugly. And I had 2 of those projects, and it just got very over exaggerated. I mean, I was receiving payroll every day from various contracts, had to verify, are you sure you hired this person? So this again makes sure to bestow the responsibility on the general contractor to make sure to let the subcontractors know we have a tool, we've implemented it, we're making sure that all the subcontractors enter all their information, and we have the state of compliance person who's responsible in approving all the hours that were done for that project, whether it's that week or the entire month or whatever the duration is, making sure every week that they approve it. So, that's all I want to say.
Councilman Prismalinski, go ahead.
Yes.
Is it Esmeralda?
Esperanza.
Esmeralda?
Esperanza, yes.
Okay. Is everybody on board in East Chicago, like the sanitary district, water department, and all that? Do you track all of them?
Well, like I said, we have several ordinances that are compliance requirement related. I oversee city and state funds. Right now I oversee the water department funds and the public works projects. We're thinking about probably looking for me to monitor federal projects. And those are much larger in scope, but a lot of times, and again, I need to make sure to follow what the ordinance says if they follow. If they actually fulfill the following requirements that we look into, making sure our project does qualify to meet the qualifications to come on board. And we have a threshold of at least $100,000, so that's what we're kind of looking at right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from council? Having none, any more comments? Carl, would you like to expound on anything?
Yes, Esperanza touched on the fact that she recovered funds. And I want to stress that we have a non-reverting job training fund, where currently the $2,500 and the $7,500 that we talked about in getting in terms of fines for non-compliant contractors, the system that's currently utilized maximizes that amount based on the ordinance requirements and the fact that the contractor has agreed beforehand to abide by the rules. What I have given you is a sample worksheet, and I put an asterisk by where it says estimated damages on a particular project. Those are the actual damages that would be actually coming into our non-reverting fund. Then we can take those funds and put them forward toward our workforce development training and any other initiative that will go to trying to get construction opportunities for our residents. With that being said, what I'm asking for the Common Council today is to approve appropriation for the purchase of this global tracking system. The actual cost of the software is $17,496.69. Presently, there's $12,000 in our non-reverting resident training program account. As a human rights director myself, I have not utilized healthcare funds that have been appropriated to my department in 2018 or this year in 2019. That being said, thus the difference of $5,496.69 can theoretically be offset by the budget savings incurred from the unused appropriation of funds for those healthcare benefits. So I'm asking twofold to appropriate the $12,000 toward the purchase of this project, and also that the council see fit to appropriate an additional $5,496.69 to get this program started. The timing at this time, we're nearing the end of the construction season. This will allow us time to effectively begin working toward having this system in place at the beginning of the next contractor season, scheduling training for the contractors, just planning the whole process out. I think that the use of this database, combined with the modification of our hiring ordinance by the Common Council, will serve as a tool to promote and increase action by the contractor to employ our city residents. That being said, I will turn it over back to the Council President.
Okay, and I have a comment. And the reason that Carl is here this evening is because him and I spoke approximately about a month ago, trying to get an update on the hiring percentages. And I don't know if you brought any of that information this evening. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about.
Well, out of those 11 projects, a lot of the information is incomplete. The general, let me just, what I do have is out of the 12, out of 10 projects, 4 are deemed non-compliant simply because of lack of complete information. They have sent information. I dispute that information because in our current system, the contractors have taken to deeming themselves compliant. So they submit information, including exemptions and giving credit for exemptions that were not authorized. And so those figures are misleading. So until we work that out, then they're simply deemed as non-compliant, as none of them are even making an attempt to actually hire any residents. Currently, we have some existing projects going on by our major contractors. We're ranking at 25%, 27.5%, 14.66%. The loan project that has been going on for some time is specifically rated at 61%. And that goes back to the manipulation of your payroll sheet to reflect that certain categories are exempt. And so you get a false picture of what the really percentages of jobs are. So nearest I can tell you is that none of these companies, with the exception of one on these contracts, is compliant at this time. So it goes for me to manually go back through every payment history and actually verify what's going on. So that, and then ultimately their final determination as far as whether they're compliant is not, it's not done until there is an order for final pay. At that point, then the entire contract is assessed and determined whether a contract has come into compliance. But right now, it's just a rolling number based on weekly entries. So you can't pinpoint and say this contract scored at this particular rate. But what I can tell you is that the number of people that are being hired is virtually zero. And that's based on looking at their personal payrolls and comparing them with past payrolls. With the Hiring Oversight Committee, at our last meeting, I actually identified the rosters of these companies. And we saw then that there was no hiring. What the companies do is, at the end of the season, they lay off the entire force. Generally in April, when the asphalt plants open up, they bring their construction crews back on. They bring back the people that they are used to working with. They are union people. So hence, we can't find anybody. So we write a letter, but they're supposed to do it with every bi-weekly payroll. They are not doing this. So that's why I say this, our system here right now is misleading. But if you actually look at the actual payroll, they have not hired anybody. This system here will ensure that the information the contractors are entering with their data, we can look at, we can cross-check it, and they're holding themselves accountable, because there's a substantial risk to paying $123,000 back or having that withheld out of a $2 million contract than it is to say, well, I'll challenge a fine of $2,500, but I've already got my money. So at this time, that's the best information I can provide you on the specifics of the contracts as where they're rated at.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Riddle. Pardon? Councilwoman Carnes?
I do have one more question. So if you were to deploy the solution, the ordinance would have to be changed in order for this particular system to work, since this tracks hours, and right now we're tracking wages.
Correct, and I think in our discussions with the Higher Oversight Committee, I think there's a general consensus that there needs to be some changes to the ordinance, and fortunately, Ms. Ramirez has provided me with some examples that the council can examine for their use to determine which direction they want to go. But I think hand in hand, the council's wishes in terms of what direction we want to go would be pivotal in determining how we gain this compliance.
Mr. President,
Councilman Beatry?
these contractors who are claiming exemptions, I've seen letters from the companies claiming exemptions and approved by the mayor. And they're requesting exemptions based on the fact that they can find no one in this area that has that specific skill that's needed for that project. Are you telling me that that's not true?
That is true, but that, here again, is a misleading fact. The contractors were required at the outside of the bidding process to enter information acknowledging whether or not they're going to be in compliance with this program at the outset during their bidding. At that time, they are supposed to submit a letter to the mayor explaining their reasons for non-compliance. I'll use an example was our recent citywide pavement markings. There's only one company that bidded on that, but because the equipment required special skills in the short time that we were needing to get it, the mayor granted an exemption. The other exemptions are when a project has started and you're in week 2 and you're supposed to provide your biweekly payroll sheet. If you cannot meet the 50% requirement during that payroll period, you are, the contractor is supposed to submit a letter from a union indicating that during this pay period, we were not able to meet our 50% goal, hiring goal, and here is why. This is a letter from our local union. What is current practice is a company will say they'll submit one letter, and that will be it. And at the end, when we come back and say, you are not compliant, and then their argument is, well, we sent in a letter on June 1st, but they didn't send anything else through December 31st. And so that's their justification for saying we should not be held accountable. But the main fact, the fact remains, is that they never hired a city resident. But their argument is they sent in a paper for an exemption. And I think that's the fact that we need to examine closely.
Well, I think I agree, because I don't see how this system is going to prevent that from happening either. If we have this new system, how is that going to prevent a contractor from claiming the same thing, that there's no one with that skill set available?
With the penalties that we actually collect at the end, we're able to try to transfer and use those funds to try to go back to the union and say, look, we were able to collect funds. We need to start trying to find people who meet your criteria to qualify to go through the program as an apprentice and do some on-the-job training and go through their program to do so. The minority component of it is, well, at least for East Chicago, there's at least 43, I think, % of Hispanic, and I want to say probably 38% of African American. So it is with reason that when we ask to hire our local residents, is that that's how we are able to cover the minority, because we have such a large population in those areas. And Hispanic is one of them, and African American is in the other one. So.
I think the gist of it is, and I'm going to keep referring back to those damages that I listed on that paperwork. That is the incentive to require the contractors to make a valued effort at hiring the employees. It's on one of the worksheets is highlighted with an asterisk. I think it lists the damages as $123,000 that they owe the city. If I'm correct, those damages are minority and resident damages based on the formulas set forth by the city council and applied to this database. And it is in their ordinance. So I do have that copy of this ordinance available for your review. I told Councilman Prisbalinski it was 60 pages long of information, so I felt best that perhaps I email it to the council and anybody that's interested in reviewing it and matching it with the information you have in front and seeing how it works together.
Okay, I see what you're talking about. So these monies then by ordinance are restricted for use solely for training programs then?
We can tailor that as part of our information, as far as what we want to do. That would take place of the $2,500 and $7,500 fine, which is not an incentive for a contractor to not hire their favorite people. So that money, based on that example alone, capturing that money would pay for this project as well as set up workforce development initiatives in other areas.
So in East Chicago, is that money earmarked solely for training? Because this is an East Chicago form. Okay.
Mostly training in the trades. There can be some exceptions if we can't find someone or something, but can be related to construction. For example, a GIS person, someone who does mappings and provides the breakouts of the map and the precincts, etc. That's geared towards training because that individual also can provide information to contractors, such as being able to locate all the different sewers, all the different lights, those kind of things. So, one thing I do want to mention is that while I had an opportunity to talk to a few union representatives and some of the trainers actually today, I do caution you that it does, since it's an apprenticeship program and they are paying for 4 years, for my understanding, it takes $100,000 to put one person through the program. That is why they are very cautious, they are very strict, and sometimes their qualifications in trying to bring people on board, they caution and they go through a committee, an aptitude test, various criteria in order to make sure that they're bringing the people on board.
Councilman Prisbalinski.
Well, I want to ask Carl, how much money do you think you're going to collect this year with these nominal fines?
Based on the current 10, I would multiply that by at least, at minimum, 2,500, and depending on whether they are repeat offenders, which some of them I know will be, that figure can balloon by $7,500 for each issue of non-compliance.
My point being is that it looks like we're going to have to get into changing the ordinance. We're going to have to put language in there to pay for the proposed program. So I think that we definitely need to have either a workshop or something as soon as the new mayor gets sworn in and move on from there.
Yes, sir.
Because it really, if you don't have the penalties in place, there's no incentive. And this has been going on ever since this ordinance has been in place.
Agreed.
And so I guess it's come to evolution that we need teeth,
Yes, sir.
okay, and not dentures, all right? So, and that being said, I understand everything that you're talking about, but you know, this could be a great thing to get Ivy Tech to create a school here, a campus here, to train people in the construction trades, and also with the high school in the construction trades, and the big, and you know, I know it's a big thing because they want people who are gonna want the job and want the career, and there's a big void, and right now this could be a big jump start because there's so many jobs that are available in the trades.
Yes.
And you know,
If I may,
sure.
we currently have programs for available to our adult residents in building trades, industrial manufacturing associated with Ivy Tech, as well as in conjunction with the A.K. Smith Center. So there are some things that workforce development initiatives are actually in place in the city. There's money from various organizations that have asked to donate money to get people involved in such initiatives. But we have to get the message out that we support workforce development initiatives and want to encourage our residents to take part and retool themselves. But once they retool themselves, we don't want them to get to the point where they become frustrated for lack of a job opportunity. And that seems to be the cry that I've been hearing from our residents. If I go through the Indiana plan, I'm not guaranteed a job. But Ivy Tech has taken that to another level and started providing certificates. That being said, even though you get a certificate from Ivy Tech, because that is not necessarily a union sanctioned training, that person may have a certificate in a particular area of expertise, but the union, for their reasons, have not opened their doors.
If I may, well, I understand everything that you're talking about, Carl, how the unions, you know, their programs work. But what I'm truly looking at is getting the people when they're in junior high and ask them and present a program. Do you want to do this? This could be your career. This could be your opportunity. Do you want to focus on it? That's where I think we need to go, to the junior highs. And we also need to, I'm talking about putting money up front, some kind of monies. We've already put money into the school system. And I don't know if a lot of people realize it, but they do get a payment out of the riverboat money is to, maybe the school system needs a retool. I mean, I'm not saying they're doing a bad job, but you know, I think that maybe they could get into more vocational orientated skills. And I mean, when I say that, I'm talking about not only pipe fitters, iron workers, whatever it might be, and tell these students, this is what you need to focus on. These are the courses you need to focus on, and we're going to take you in this direction. And, you know, like they have a program in there for ROTC, come up with a program, something innovative, you know, for craft workforce development. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council members? Having none, go ahead,
I
ma'am.
just wanted to make a comment relative to your comment. In Chicago, there's a number of initiatives working with high schools, such as Dunbar. Well, at Dunbar, they have a number of trade-related classes in the high school, and right next to their high school is Local 134, which is the electrical union. So you have Prosser High School as well, which they have a number of trade related. So you'll see that so that you have some models, and they're still working it out. Okay, but there's a number of high schools over there with plans. We are working with CTA and Walsh Construction on what is called the CREATE program, which is the Chicago Regional Environmental and Transportation Efficiency Program, which is a huge railroad-related program. Okay, in that we're working with them to develop a number of initiatives looking at high schools, trying to see if we can get dual credits from the high schools to some of the two-year colleges, from the two-year colleges to see what can transfer over into a four-year credit program. In fact, Chicago is working through city colleges with Purdue University here because they have, not here in Michigan City, but in Hammond-Calumet with their engineering program. So there's a number of different models that might be out there, and given that a lot of them have lessons learned, it's always good when you can go behind with lessons learned in developing those type of programs. And that's something that generally we also assist our clients with. Relative to the utilization of GPTS currently, relative to what your current ordinance is, when we spoke with Carl about that, we can do some customized reports so that you can see where you're at right now, because the system is collecting all of the data relative to wages and all that you would need. If we had certain reports, you might want to look at that and then compare it with what it is that you want to go forth with, again, to substantiate why you need to make a move or a change with your ordinance. Okay.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody? Council, presenters? Go ahead.
I just want to mention that a lot of the programs, such as Alicia mentioned, I'm also outreaching to the various high schools in the area and going there with Indiana Plan and explaining what we're doing and trying to attract our youth to be a part of it. But our area, we have 2 career centers that have other workshops and really on-the-job training programs in which can introduce this kind of concept. But I do want to let you know that the contractors that you use here, the general contractors, a lot of those I'm working with as well. So they are familiar with our penalties and our program. The only difference is that you're in a different county than I am. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Carl, and all the presenters. It's very good information, and I'm glad that we had that discussion, Carl, to get together and bring this information to us. I think it can be a useful tool. And what I'd like to do is wait till next year when a new mayor comes in and we can sit down and present it to him and see what he thinks moving forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Nyland, any petitions before us this evening?
You need to do claims first.
Pardon?
Claims.
Oh, claims, okay. Claims docket this evening, Fund 2042 Riverboat claims of $1,815.57. EFT, $2,000, and Boyd Development, $26,961.12. Is there a motion to pay the claims?
So moved. Support.
Motion by Councilman Dabney and seconded by Councilman Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Claims will be paid. Ms. Nyland, now any petitions before us this evening?
There are no petitions.
Communications?
Correspondence was received in the clerk's office on November 4th and November 12th from DLZ Weekly Activity Reports ESG Energy Project. Correspondence was also received on November 12th from DLZ the Field Observation Visit Report ESG Energy Project Solar System Inspection of the Senior Center.
Thank you, Ms. Nyland. And our first resolution before us this evening by title only without objection.
A resolution by title only increasing and decreasing certain appropriations within the budget of the fire department and the general fund number 1001 for the year 2019 in Michigan City, Indiana. And this is introduced by Mr. Don Prespolinski.
Thank you, Ms. Nyla. And for the council's information, I am going to propose an amendment. The original resolution was presented to the city council at $80,000. The amended resolution has been cut now to $73,000. And I will go ahead and I'll go ahead and read the verbiage on here. Let's see, we're able to, this is from the fire chief, we were able to firm up the amount we needed to transfer. We'll be able to reduce the amount of the transfer to $73,000. As you can see in the email, I added plus behind some of the items because we did not have all the total costs at the time, and the resolution needed to be in the clerk's office, understood. And if anything needed to be asked, reach out to them. Utilities, NIPSCO, phone, water, sewage, need $12,000 to finish out the year. Turnout gear, coats, pants, gloves, boots, $44,500. Station repair, water heater, garage doors, exhaust system for $10,000. Equipment, nozzles, $6,500 for a total of $73,000. Is there a second on the amendment?
Second.
Okay, Councilman Prespolinski, Paul Prespolinski, seconded the amendment, and I already explained what the motion was for, and sponsors' comments, same thing. Is there any public comment? Any public comment on the resolution and the amended resolution? Any public comment on the amended resolution? No questions from the public, so public comment is closed. Council comment?
I'd like to
Councilman Prespolinski?
thank you, Councilman Don Prespolinski. Jesus. The amount being taken out of this account, are we gonna have on that sick buyback? Are we gonna have to fund that at a later time, Chief? Or is that just bogus money there?
No, Randy Novak, Fire Chief. It's not bogus money. Is what it is every year you don't know how many sick days they use, and that's funded based on a dollar amount as to how many sick days are left at the end of the year, if they want to sell them or they want to bank them. This year, the majority of the people banked their days, so they didn't get reimbursed for them. So there was some extra money. There's still some extra money there that's going to be turned back into the city, so we didn't take that all the way down to the penny. So there's some cushion there, but that'll be turned back in. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? Councilman Fitzpatrick?
Yep, just one quick question. The turnout gear for $44,500. How much does that actually cover?
It's approximately, in whether it's a complete set, a coat and pants for a fire coat cost about $2,700 for the coat and pants together. So sometimes a guy just needs a coat, sometimes he needs pants. So it's approximately about 12 sets, but it could also be gloves are $100 a set, boots are $400, a hood is $120, a helmet's $250. So it's a combination of those things that we had to buy. Every 10 years with NFPA, and we follow NFPA, every 10 years, if we buy a coat and it says it's manufactured today, 10 years from now that coat has to be taken out of service. So regardless if it's still brand new or it doesn't. So we have to follow the regulations.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep. So it's hard to give you an exact.
Any other comments from council members or the chief? Councilman Butry?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion to approve by Councilman Beatry. No, we didn't. Councilman Beatry, seconded by Councilman Dabney. Are there any other questions? All right, having none, Ms. Nyla on the vote.
Mr. Stemley?
Aye.
Mr. Beatry?
Aye.
Mr. Dabney?
Aye.
Ms. Carnes?
Aye.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Don Prespolinski?
Aye.
Mr. Paul Prespolinski?
Aye.
Mr. Simmons?
Aye.
We have 9 in favor and no one opposed.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Just out of curiosity, did you just vote on the amendment or did you vote on the passage?
We did the amendment.
You're the
We
attorney.
did the amendment with the.
We voted on the amendment.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
still, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 2 motions here.
Want to make sure the check shows up on, no.
Yeah, yeah, we voted on the amendment.
When we said it, everybody could, let's say
They
aye.
made a motion, Don made a motion to amend it, and Paul did. Then we have Tim and
Well, he
Brian.
made a second.
So,
He made a second. He
alright.
Excuse me.
Huh?
made the amendment. He seconded it.
Excuse me.
So
No.
now we gotta vote on the resolution.
No, you voted, Don made a motion to amend it. Paul seconded.
Right,
We didn't
Everybody
need,
signify by saying aye.
We didn't-
That was the amendment.
we just voted on the amendment.
And then the other one I thought was the
Now we have to
resolution
vote on
itself.
the resolution.
So we voted twice for the amendment?
Now we vote on the resolution.
yes,
Okay,
this was a vote on the amendment. We had 2 motions. Now, if Tim and Brian would like to make a motion to approve the amended resolution, so be it.
Make a motion to approve.
okay, motion to approve the amended resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Hamilton.
Okay.
Ms. Nyla on the vote.
Mr. Beatry?
Aye.
Mr. Dabney?
Aye.
Ms. Carnes?
Aye.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Prespolinski? Don Prespolinski? Mr. Paul Prespolinski?
Aye.
Mr. Simmons?
Aye.
And Mr. Stemley?
Aye.
We have 9 in favor and no one opposed.
Thank you, Ms. Nyla. Okay, Ms. Nyla, our first ordinance on first reading this evening by title only without objection.
An ordinance on first reading by title only, approving additional appropriation in the budget of the Riverboat Fund to pay for employee benefits, sick day, sellback, longevity, and vacation bonus for various city departments. And this is introduced by Mr. Prespolinski and Mr. Beatry.
And do the authors have anything they'd like to add at this time? Mr. Beatry? I have a couple comments in how this all evolved to where we're at today of paying $25.60 for vacation bonuses for number one, the city clerk, which goes back through 2013 to 2018 for a total of $7,757.47. For the mayor's office, which is sick day sellback for 2019 of $3,628.80. The mayor's office vacation bonus, which goes back to 2013 through 2019 for $5,655.63. The Promise Scholarship Director vacation bonus of $1,039.82. Promise Scholarship Director longevity pay for 2019 of $450. The Human Rights Director vacation bonus of $731.01. And Event Coordinator for vacation bonus for 2019 of $454.62. And I can address the mayor's office and the clerk's office and why they came up with such large totals is because back when the controller at that time had told, in her mind, she thought that because they were elected officials, that they could not receive the vacation bonus that's allotted them in the city handbook. Same thing went for the city clerk and for the mayor. After some investigating work was done, that was found to be not true, and that's why we are paying the clerk's office the vacation bonus back, the mayor's office the vacation bonus back. The other items which fall under all that fall under 2019, those were all oversights by the controller's office. So these are monies that have to be paid per the employee handbook. With that being said, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this ordinance this evening? Anyone from the public wishes to speak on this ordinance? Anyone from the public wishes to speak on this ordinance? Having none, any council comments? Councilman Przybylski?
Yes, it amazes me that it took, I'll say it like I see it, is 5 years to, or 6 years to figure out that these people were entitled to this money. So in saying that, was this any communication from the legal department, or who gave the opinion that, if the controller wants to answer this, did the state answer this question, or how was it come to this decision after it was made that people weren't entitled to this money?
Good evening, Council. Rich Murphy, City Controller. As President Przybylski said, prior administration had taken a position on these benefits. My understanding is that no action was taken until most recently when the mayor asked corporate counsel to look into this matter, and after she did, she found a legal basis that these benefits are due to the employees and need to be paid. And from there, the mayor introduced the ordinance for these benefits to be paid.
May I have a additional question?
Sure.
Well, in saying that, Mr. Murphy, didn't this fall under the previous controller made this determination?
I believe 2 controllers ago.
2 controllers? Okay. So then you took over, what, 3 years ago?
Almost
Basically?
4.
Almost 4? So, with this discrepancy in there, it amazes me that these people have been owed this money and they haven't been paid this money, and that there was like not even a lawsuit filed or some action. So with saying that, I think that maybe we need to pay some type of interest on this money. You know, it's like a settlement to me, basically. Are people going to sign off on this, that they're not due any more monies on this? Has this been discussed?
I don't know if that's been discussed.
Somebody needs to ask somebody.
I do know that the corporate counsel believes this is the best way to proceed.
Okay.
And
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Are there any other council comments on this ordinance? Any further council comments? Councilman Dabney, you have a question? Okay. Having none, this ordinance will be held over to our next meeting. And I will ask City Attorney Amber LePage if there needs to be any signing off on any legal documents so people cannot file for their claims. Okay. Ms. Adler, our next ordinance on second reading by title only, without objection.
An ordinance on second reading by title only, an ordinance vacating a portion of public street in the city of Michigan City located between 12 East Business Center subdivision and Bayview Addition and running north and parallel to U.S. Highway number 12. And this is introduced by Mr. Simmons and Mr. Dabney.
And does the author have anything he'd like to add at this time? Having none, Mr. Simmons, anything you'd like to add at this time? Okay. Anyone from the public? Mr. McDonald?
Public hearing. Tonight's the public hearing.
Oh, and also this evening, we're gonna have a formal public hearing. So this begins the formal public hearing. Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the council, again, for the record, my name is Barry McDonald. I'm an attorney here in Michigan City with offices at 601 Franklin Street. And I again stand before you representing the Honer and Bennett families who have petitioned the council for vacation of a portion of an undeveloped street in Michigan City known as North Street, which sits generally north of US Highway 12 and just west of the Pioneer Lumber site. Brian and Danielle Honer are both here this evening. If you have any questions, I'm sorry. Sorry. That's all right. It's Nicole, not Danielle. I apologize. I would note for the record that for tonight's public hearing, the city clerk's office did a great job of not only putting publication notice in the News Dispatch as statutorily required, but also sent notice to the other affected property owners, the Jackson family. And I think Deborah Jackson was here, so she's certainly aware. The Jackson family may be entitled, if the council were to favorably look upon our petition, to receive a portion of the vacated street. I would note that at last hearing, or the last council meeting, there was a bit of confusion regarding the name that shows up in both the petition and the ordinance regarding the identification of the property. The petitioner's property encompasses both a portion of Bayview subdivision and 12 East Business Center subdivision. Those are merely the names of the subdivisions. It does not imply ownership, and by that I mean, much like my property where I live in Old Edgewood, the legal description on my deed is identified as lot such and such, Ledbetter and Vales Edition. It's just the name of the subdivision when the subdivision in the city was laid out. Doesn't imply that anybody from the Ledbetter or Vale family still own my property. At least I hope not. So I just wanted to be clear to the council and to the public that the petitioners, which are again the Honer and Bennett families, are not affiliated with 12 East Business Center or MCEDC or the historic Joe Sam Foundry. They are new owners, completely independent from all those folks, looking to develop this parcel in Michigan City. And as you, again, we mentioned at the last meeting, and as I pointed out at the last meeting, North Street does a good job of kind of bisecting what is already a kind of a difficult site to develop. The motivating factor behind this petition is to allow my clients a little more room to potentially develop the site. They have not settled on a final development of that site. Obviously, some of it depends on the council's action, but they have discussed and talked about potential storage facilities, although certainly not decided upon that at this time. And certainly any use would have to run through the planning department and be approved by that department, as well as potentially anything that would have to run through the Plan Commission or Board of Zoning Appeals. I believe that all of the city department reports indicated that there were no objections filed by any of the noticed up city departments. The only two substantive comments came, as is not unusual, from the water department and the sanitary district. They wanted to make sure that the council's approval, if it was so inclined, that it would be contingent upon my clients granting appropriate utility easements to allow for the continued placement of the water lines and sewer lines that currently run underneath North Street. Certainly my clients have no problem with that. In fact, to keep that process moving, I've taken the liberty of drafting an appropriate easement agreement. I have forwarded it to Mr. Russell at the Water Department. I forwarded it to Mr. Meyer on behalf of the Sanitary District. So again, if this moves forward, by the time we would have third reading, we would certainly probably have a final version of that easement agreement so that it would go into place shortly thereafter, after the council's potential favorable approval. So that's our brief presentation. Again, my clients are here for any specific questions, and I'm certainly happy to try and answer any questions that the council may have as well. Thank you again.
Mr. Myers has a question.
Yeah, I just want to point out to the council that there's a slight complication in this case because part of the vacated street is on the Jackson property and maybe somebody else, I don't know. It's not owned by the petitioners. So the petitioners cannot grant an easement on somebody else's property. So for this to work, we, meaning the sanitary district and the water department, since the lines are already there, would need the easements, appropriate easements from the other landowner or owners. I'm not sure how many there are.
I think it's just the only other family would be the Jackson family, so he's correct. I mean, the price we pay in a sense for gaining this property from the city is both sides would have to grant the easement. Again, I can only speak for my clients, but I would imagine if the Jacksons were inclined to accept this property, they would be expecting to have to grant the easement agreement. I think, again, Ms. Jackson is here to speak on her father's behalf this evening. And again, if the Jackson family, quite candidly, did not want the property or for some reason perceived a negative to the property, I am certain that my clients would be happy to accept a quitclaim deed of the property, and then it really would be our responsibility to grant the easement.
That would be acceptable, either way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mrs. Jackson?
Good evening. My name is Deborah Jackson. I'm speaking on behalf of my father, who has since passed on October 5th.
Ms. Jackson, excuse me, could you, your address?
Oh, I'm sorry.
For the record, please.
It's 219 Hillcrest Road, Michigan City, Indiana.
Yep, thanks.
Excuse me. I want to speak on behalf of my father he has since passed October 5th of this year. I would like to table this matter until I can finalize all of his business affairs and try to come back to finalize everything and speak to an attorney.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Carl Little, Michigan City Human Rights Director. At this time, the Human Rights Department does not concur with the granting of the easement.
Pardon? Carl, could you say that again? I'm
The
sorry.
Human Rights Department does not concur with the granting of an easement at this time.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Public hearing is now closed. Council comments on this ordinance? Councilman Fitzpatrick?
I did have a question for the owners. Mr. McDonald said that you had entertained, I guess, the idea of storage or something to that effect. What other ideas or what other goals were you seeking with this piece of property?
Ultimately, Brian owner of the property we're speaking of, we're looking to basically combine the properties to look at what avenues we can search out. Obviously, we're open for ideas as well. Storage units is one thing that came up, and that's where we're at. We're looking at how the entire site lays out and how things fit before we proceed with anything, given the vacation of the property would be the paramount at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Dammy?
Just real quick, Ms. Jackson, what she asked for seems reasonable to me. That, you know, in my mind, I think we should table so she gets a chance to speak to legal representation. I just think that's only fair. So I'll wait for other comment, but I am going to make a motion to table at some point. That wasn't the official motion. I'll let other people comment first.
Okay. And then, Councilman Simmons?
I also concur. I would like to give her an opportunity to get her legal affairs in order before we move forward on this.
Okay. Councilman Hamilton?
I have a question for Attorney Meyer. This has to be finished by the end of this year, correct? For this council, otherwise you gotta start the whole process over again. So, when you guys make your motion to table, just remember to either we finish it this year, or you start over next year, and you're gonna have more advertising fees and the rest add up, so.
Any other council comments? One comment I have is, I know that if we vacate the alley, we're giving city property away for free. Was there ever discussions between Mr. McDonald, Mr. Honer, with the city planner as far as paying so much for a square foot of land, you know, getting two appraisals and paying the city something for just giving away free land? And here's my point. Here's my point. Is we're going to give away this big piece of property. I mean, to me, it looks like it's about 2 blocks, maybe 2.5 blocks long. Anyway, and the intentions are for you guys to, you know, develop it and make a profit with the land. For some reason, you know, if it's legal, and that's the way things are done. But I just can't, for some reason, it doesn't feel right to me that we just give property away to, I guess, individuals that can have the means to go ahead and develop a piece of property like you're looking at doing and taking a shot at it, where the average person, you know, can't get a piece of property for free because it's not in their neighborhood. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem fair to me. I mean, were you guys ever approached as far as paying for this property?
I guess I would, and Mr. Myers can comment, but
sure.
The answer is no. Mr. Phillips was well aware of it, actually filed a report on behalf of his department, and I think that my clients discussed it with him long before they even came to see me and started this process. I guess I would also answer that there is a process for the city to get rid of surplus property, and that process follows what you've described. Meaning if the city owned a lot, for example, some of the lots that the city owns in Sheridan Beach or other locations throughout the city, that's a process where there is appraisals, and I think, again, I don't represent the city, but I suspect competitive bidding, and I think the Board of Works deals with that process. But with regard to rights-of-way, because we're talking about streets and alleys, essentially, the statute, the state statute, really doesn't envision any payment, and I don't know, but that I don't even know if a city were to enact some type of ordinance in contravention of the statute where they all of a sudden started to extract money for the vacation process. I have no clue whether that's even constitutional in the state of Indiana, because again, this process exists by state statute, and I certainly agree to a certain degree it's something for nothing, but the counter to that is when this subdivision was laid out, and I presume Bayview particularly subdivision, and 12 East subdivision was really a re-subdivision of another old section of Michigan City. I suspect these roads were laid out 90, 100, 110, 120, I don't know how many years ago, but the city has probably, had 100+ years to develop those streets, to pave them, to use them, to do something with them. So the theory, I think, in the state statute is you've got on one hand this big swath of property stifling development, not doing the city any good, that can potentially be kind of put back into the tax rolls, put back into the development, put back into investment, put back into jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And certainly it's open to anybody, private citizen, corporate citizen. And certainly this council has done it many, many times and has gotten great results, and many other councils like it throughout the state. So that's, I guess, my 2 cents, Mr. President, about how I would comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Myers?
Yeah, I just would say that in the state of Indiana, the Indiana Supreme Court has held that the city's rights in the right-of-way are not fee. Meaning
They're not what? I'm sorry.
Fee. You don't own it.
Oh.
It's like an easement, okay? And that's why when the right-of-way goes away, if you get rid of it, that the adjacent property owners get the property because they've owned it all the while. It's just that it was encumbered by a right-of-way, just like if it's encumbered by an easement. Now, this property will continue to be encumbered by an easement, so they're not even going to get free use of all the property. But that's the theory behind why there's no appraisals, there's no, the usual sale process.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President. So,
Councilman Fitzpatrick?
With that being said, the way you just articulated that, so the property owned by Mrs. Jackson, that wouldn't be held by that same standard then, correct?
It's held by the same standard. If
So
the
she would have
council agrees, votes to vacate North Street, and if she or her dad had property adjacent to North Street that's no longer there, they automatically have ownership, and they've had it all along actually, but full ownership to the middle of the vacated street.
Right, so then, but it's her property, not the city's. You said the city can't fee it.
Right.
But does that apply to private owners as well?
I'm not sure.
So can Miss Jackson sell her portion of the property that needs to be vacated?
She can sell right now, as Mr. McDonald pointed out, use a quitclaim deed probably because it's easier and cheaper. She can sell whatever interest she has in the underlying interest. If the street is vacated, she can sell, the property as vacated, as fully owned, except burdened by an easement. Okay.
That's what I wanted to
But I just want to make sure I understand your question too, Councilman Fitzpatrick. Neither my clients nor Ms. Jackson's family could sell that property now. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I mean, even though they have some historic underlying right to it, they can't do anything. But
that's what I was saying.
Correct.
If we decided to vacate it, then her portion doesn't fall under the same state statutes that what the municipality has.
Oh, it would. No, Ms. Jackson, other than she's not the petitioner, is in exactly the same footing for her portion of the vacated road as my clients are. Their portion is bigger just because their boundary on the street is bigger, but she's in exactly the same footing. She would get the same 25 feet of vacated road, and she would be expected, or her family would be expected, to allow an easement there. And again, it's already encumbered. The pipes are already in the ground, so this is just kind of formalizing what perhaps should have been done decades and decades ago.
Thank you.
Layman's terms. This is layman's terms. And I think this is where we're getting at. When all this happens, in the end, Miss Jackson can sell this property.
Correct.
And we just want to make sure, like I said, this is layman terms, that this is not taken away from her without having a chance to do anything, like I said, like profit from this property. That's the question, basically.
No.
In layman's terms.
No, and I would argue, obviously we don't want to restart the process. I met with Ms. Jackson, and she has legitimate concerns, and so I respect her wishes. And I will tell you the same thing I told her, which is I don't see a downside. I'm not serving as her attorney, but I don't see a downside in accepting this 25 feet, meaning on one hand, you don't own it now. You get it, certainly subject to an easement, but certainly that 25 feet, even subject to an easement, allows a greater parcel to potentially sell to a developer or use for a developer. And on the other hand, if the concern is, well, that's true, but we may have additional tax burden because we now own more property, she doesn't have to keep it long term because, again, my clients would be happy to have it. So I mean, under no scenario would in my opinion, she be worse off potentially than she currently sits. But again, I don't mean to speak for her, and she should get her own counsel to weigh in.
And one other point is that, so everybody can look at this from the other property owner, that do I get this right, Honer?
Yeah, you're good.
They're paying the expense of the petition, and I don't believe Miss Jackson has any monetary has encumbered any monetary expenses yet. So it's actually, I hope she, can, if she doesn't want to accept the property, they've already said that they'll accept it under a quitclaim deed. We've not given away, we have put these easements, there's another way to look at this, back on the tax rolls to making them usable property. Now there's been parcels divided up with neighbors in different neighborhoods for a minimal cost of $1, and that lot was divided in half, and each neighbor agreed to take care of it. So I mean, it's not a new process. Thank you.
Any other questions from Mr. McDonald and Mr. Horner? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this ordinance? Public portion is now closed. Any further council comments? Councilman Dabney?
I have no comment, but I told you I would make the motion to table.
Motion to table and seconded by Councilman Przybylski.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Gotta go to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Motion to go to the next meeting.
Well, maybe let me ask this question: how much time is Miss Jackson gonna need to get a hold of an attorney or whatever she's? Well, I know that. Yeah, we should ask her because she might not be ready to come back in 2 weeks.
Hello again.
Yes.
I'll say approximately 30 days, perhaps.
Pardon?
Perhaps 30 days. About
Sure.
30 days.
Yeah.
That won't give us enough time.
Well,
30 days will take us the second reading to the first meeting in
30 days will take you into mid-December.
So then you have to have a special meeting.
Well,
We can add this consent to second and third reading of the same.
is 2 weeks?
I'm sorry?
Is 2 weeks okay? Can you get it done in 2 weeks?
No, I can't. Like I said, my father just passed and we're still finalizing everything that we need to get done to take care of what we need to do. And I also work, and I'm not going to be here in town that often. So that being said, I think I need 30 days. I need about 30 days to get this done.
Yeah. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll be here at the, we'll.
I'm gonna withdraw my second and he's gonna expand his motion.
Okay. Mr. Przybylski pulls back his second, and Mr. Dabney, would you like to redo your motion?
Yeah, so I'm gonna make the motion to table until our second meeting, which is December 17th.
Okay.
Second. I think it's 28 days.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you so
We
much.
can wait.
Okay, and it was seconded by Councilman Przybylski, so the Ordinance is tabled at this time.
Can we have your address and that in the clerk's office?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very
You
much.
need it now or?
You can give it to Carl.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, I do too. Okay, Ms. Nyla, on the vote, please, to table.
Aye.
Ms. Carnes?
Aye.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Prespolinski? Don Prespolinski?
Aye.
Mr. Paul Prespolinski?
Aye.
Mr. Simmons?
Aye.
Mr. Stemley?
Aye.
And Mr. Beatry?
Aye.
We have 9 in favor and no one opposed.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Nyla. Okay, that takes us through our ordinances into unfinished business. The council has one appointee to the Veterans Commission due to the resignation of Ms. Natalie Stewart, whose term expires December 31st, 2020. I know that Ms. Connie Anderson has filled out a application in the clerk's office for that position. So at the next meeting, well, let me ask, are there any nominations?
There was nothing received in the clerk's office.
Okay, nothing. Yeah, I thought Connie Anderson had applied.
That was on Friday. It was past the deadline.
Pardon?
It was past the deadline.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm sorry. All right. Well, we will be taking nominations at our next meeting again. Now, unless there's any nominations now. All right. Under new business, the Common Council has one appointment to the Michigan City Commission for Women, whose term expires December 21st, 2019, and the incumbent is Ms. Kendra K. Hill. And the Common Council has two appointments to the Michigan City Redevelopment Commission, whose term expires December 31st, 2019, and the incumbents are Mr. John Cheech and Mr. Pat Kowalski. Are there any comments from the public? Any public comment? Any public comment this evening?
Public comment in general?
Yeah, go, yeah, Jessica. Use a microphone. Right. Right. I understand.
Hi, good evening, Council.
I knew she'd be here.
Good evening, David Farmer, Michigan City Street Department Street Director.
Dr. Jessica Arnett, Vector Control Department Head and City Forester. Thank you for having us again. So the first order of business, I believe, right, is to report to you the decisions we made based on our discussion of inventory at our last council meeting. So I wanted to report to you that we had some conversations and essentially decided that the street department will conduct inventory in May and December of each year, and Vector Control would conduct inventory in the spring prior to seasonal hire and late fall, early winter after seasonal hires depart. We discussed the possibility of specific dates for an inventory, but given the unpredictable nature of street department and Vector Control work, it's not really practical, if that makes sense. Most of what street department and Vector Control does is entirely weather contingent. And so that's the reason for, narrowing it down to a couple of months a year. Are there any questions?
Any questions from council members?
Can you send that to the clerk's office so I can send it out to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any questions from the council members?
Okay. I have a couple actually of, and I'll try to be quick. I have a couple of loose ends from our previous meeting 2 weeks ago that I wanted to go ahead and tie up, if that would be all right. There's a couple of reasons for doing this. Number one is that I think and strongly believe that the residents of Michigan City need to have accurate figures when they're considering the effectiveness of our departments and the way that our departments operate. And also, I guess it's a little bit of a personal reason, but most of you know that I come from an academic background in addition to Parks and Rec. But I come from a particular academic background. One of my primary dissertation advisors that reviewed and critiqued and approved all of my research is actually one of the most well-known and well-respected legal historians in the country. And so her training and the rigorous with which she trained me is how I approach my professional responsibilities. And so I don't like loose ends. The first thing that I wanted to address, and I think you'll all actually appreciate this and find this kind of interesting and relevant, is the number of chainsaws that we have in our inventory. I know that that came up in the previous meeting, 46 chainsaws. And I know that the intention of that question was not necessarily malicious in any way, but what my fear was is that, residents in Michigan City, I think, deserve an explanation as to why we have so many chainsaws. So I actually reached out and spoke with one of the previous foresters, Frank Seilheimer, and I can't remember exactly his dates when he was a forester, but he discussed with me that, he had noticed that there was a lack of adequate chainsaws at the time that he was forester, and so they were in a process of trying to acquire 1 to 2 per year at the end of the year if they had leftover funds for those purposes. But then in 2010 and 2011, there were some major storms in which 100 and 200 mile winds were coming off of Lake Michigan and wrought a lot of devastation. And there weren't enough chainsaws to get into people's hands in the street department and vector control to be actually able to clear all of that debris. And so it's a matter of preparedness that they bulked up their chainsaw inventory. The second issue that I wanted to clarify or to correct for the record was our discussion of budget requests of our departments for the purchase of tools and minor equipment. So at the previous council meeting, President Presbolinski stated that every year, and I'm quoting from the record, I went back and watched the tapes, that every year the city, quote, gives the street department 30 grand to go out and burn money on tools and nobody has any idea where they're at. And it was further implied that those funds were being routinely misused to the detriment of other funding possibilities such as playground equipment. He also stated that every budget cycle, these departments, I'm assuming you still meant Vector and the street department, come before council and ask for another $20,000 in tools because we don't know where our tools are. I believe my reporting from last council effectively demonstrated that we have control of our inventory, but what I really want to set straight for the record tonight and for the people of Michigan City are the actual amounts that street department and vector control are allotted in the budget and what we request. And this is budget line item 423.031, tools and minor equipment. The street department budget for small tools and minor equipment is actually only about $2,500 to $3,500 per year over the last several years. Vector control budget for small tools and minor equipment is actually only $750 per year for the last several years. And I believe what was going on was that President Presbolinski may have been confusing the central maintenance budget for tools and equipment with that of central services, which is the main department under which street department and vector control are housed. So central maintenance requirements in terms of tools and equipment far exceed anything that central services needs, as they are responsible for keeping the entire fleet of city vehicles, including transit, fire, police, refuse, sanitation, planning vehicles, and all of the equipment that we use, such as leaf vacs, mowers, hot patch machines, lifts, all of those things in working order on a day-to-day basis. And so their budget requests and their budget allotments are far greater than vector control and street department. So I think maybe you had confused the two. But what I wanted to make very clear was that street department and vector control, our budgets for things like chainsaws, pole saws, trimmers, those tools and minor equipment are actually very small, and we keep a very tight eye on those budgets. And the last thing, it's a much smaller handout this week. I actually went back and looked at all the receipts for everything.
I'll take her.
Oh, okay, thank you. For everything that Street Department and Vector Control has purchased in the way of chainsaws, blowers, trimmers, and pole saws, and I included mowers because that's something that needs to be replaced every 10 to 15 years, since 2012. So since 2012, combined Vector and Street Department have spent $1,079.85 on chainsaws. Street and Vector have spent $3,519.68 on blowers. We've spent $719.88 on trimmers, $2,079.84 on pole saws, and $22,857 on the mowers that Vector Control uses, which are those stand-up zero-turn. They usually cost around $6,000 to $9,000 each. And looking through the receipts, it doesn't look like those had been replaced in about 10 or 15 years. And so, with the mowers included, over the past 8 years, our total expenditures on this kind of equipment has only been $30,256.25. If you don't include the mowers, for chainsaws, blowers, trimmers, and pole saws, the majority of the items that were called into question in our inventory and how much they cost us over 8 years has only been $7,399.68. That's all.
I have a question.
Councilman Przybylski.
Yes.
So, are you getting us ready for 2 new mowers next year?
I don't think so. Why?
Well, you said they're 10 or 15
no. The
years old.
The ones that we purchased since 2012 were replacing mowers that were
Okay.
had been purchased in the very early 2000s.
All right.
So.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the information.
Yeah, and too, the majority of the chainsaws that were purchased under Frank Seilheimer's tenure as Forester and Vector Control, those are all about 8 to 10 years old, if not more, and they've been meticulously maintained. They're all in working order, and I just wanted to, I wanted to get it on the record what it is that we actually spend. I think that's important for the people of Michigan City to know.
I have a question. I thought there was one more request that I had made in reference to the cameras.
Yes.
And to get a hold of Mandy McTanick from the IT department and to have him look at the cameras and give us an estimate on what brand new cameras would cost for that building.
I believe
Was that
Bob Zonder. Yeah, he's on that. He's actually been out sick for the last few days. He's pretty ill. But I know that the previous estimate he had
Is it done, or did he get it done, or you don't?
Well, we had an estimate of $50,000, which he had mentioned at the previous meeting. And that's just, after multiple consultations with IT during the months of September and October. That was essentially the number they came up with. I don't know if they put that in a formal sort of proposal format to go out as, bids, but I do know that was mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you all.
All right, thank you. Any more comments from the public? Any more public comment?
And this is for general comments, or is on a specific topic?
Pardon?
Is this for general comments or on a specific? Okay, cool.
Name and address for the clerks?
Sure. Michael Hale, 900 South Clark, Chicago, 60605. It's been a while since I've been at this microphone. I've worked with some of you in the past during my time with the Michigan City Main Street Association, Michigan City Summer Festival Committee, and my own business, South Shore Media. But definitely wanted to recognize, back here visiting tonight to share a couple of details with you, my past and future a little bit, and hopefully leave you guys with something you can use.
But, yeah, I can hardly believe it myself, but, it's been 10 years since I first came before the city council to call out an outdated city website. It's still emichigancity.com, but at the time it was kind of disorganized, and you could tell even 10 years ago it was outdated. And now I've heard that there's a new website coming up, which is pretty exciting, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. But when I first came before the council, that kind of kicked off, I was mid-20s or something at the time, that kind of kicked off an interest in technologies and city. And I've pursued, ever since I've had social media, an interest in combining the two, seeing how they're intertwined. My professional career hasn't completely aligned with that, but personally, as more of a hobby and stuff, I have worked my way into that position. And my current company, who I work for in downtown Chicago, Prime TSR, I feel that I'm in the best position yet to actually make something like that happen. So I started to go down the path of looking through the concept of smart cities, and if you're not aware of that, I would highly encourage you to check it out. Basically, that's, just like I'm saying, how to leverage technology for the operational operations of a city, and how to serve its citizens. Whether it being tickets online or kind of a good segue from the earlier presentation about putting that data online into a web-based format that was previously a manual operation. But it's also a holistic view of how you take everything together as like a package. So it's also important to check out. So again, back to my company I work for now, Prime TSR. I'm a cloud consultant and solutions architect, starting in Michigan City as more of a digital marketing consultant. But as careers change, especially as IT goes, you kind of go with the flow a little bit. And I've been fortunate that I've had the ability to pursue my interest with that. So we, Prime TSR, we are the 22nd fastest growing consulting firm in the nation, and the second fastest growing in Chicago. So, this isn't just a small time operation by any means. We're also in the top third of the Inc. 5000 list. But we're not a managed service provider, so we don't handle day-to-day operations. We won't, we can, but typically we don't administer your email accounts day-to-day, or we won't come by to fix your printer. Although we can certainly assist with that in a roundabout way. So given that I'm back to more of a consultant role, I've always had a desire to help and share information, and as some of you may remember, I would get on my soapbox and explain how we could do things better or a certain way, or bring the city more to be more technology centric. So what I'm really here to share with you is that I recently wrote an abstract paper that was accepted by an international conference. That conference is called the annual Smart Cities International Symposium. That takes place on January 21st and 22nd in Chicago. The subject, the presentation I'll be giving is dealing with ransomware, which I'm sure you've heard some headlines. It's a big topic around the nation, but of course, as we know, LaPorte County itself was hit, and I believe Lake County had some issues with that as well. So it's highly topical, highly relevant. My presentation is only about 25 minutes with a few minutes for Q&A. So I'll be keeping that a bit high level. So I won't be going to technical details that might be over anyone's head, but what I'm trying to do is leave anyone there with some actionable information that they can walk away with. And this not only the presentation, but the symposium itself is geared towards city managers. So you might not be sending like an intern or something like that. Mayors are going to be here. They've already got a list of past participants. So you've got cities, you've got corporations. Google has been involved with this symposium in past years. And now's my turn to throw my hat in the ring and see what I can do.
Sir, could you speak into the microphone a little bit?
Sorry,
Thank you.
Moving away there. Anyway, so I'm basically inviting the city of Michigan City to someone else's party. I'm not affiliated with the symposium. I'm just there speaking, but also trying to come back to my hometown and help educate people. I think there's definitely something there that Michigan City can benefit from. Especially as you look to integrate some of these technology platforms and systems. For example, let's see, some topics that are going to be covered by other presenters would be leveraging data and public policies to drive optimal outcomes, and defining and moving towards a holistic smart city vision. So stuff like that. That's basically just what I wanted to say. Thanks for your time, and I'll forward some information, of course, grab all your emails online and give you some details on that. So, and I'll hang out for a few minutes if anyone wanted to chat for a while, but thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hale. Any other comments from the public? Having none? Council comments? Councilman Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, I had a couple announcements from the public. So the Greater Indiana Food Bank will be giving away turkeys at Carson's tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. and it's one per family. So that's at the Old Market Mall where Carson's used to be. And Advanced Christ Kingdom on 1407 East Michigan Boulevard will also be giving away turkeys tomorrow at 10. I don't have any more details for that. And on November 23rd, between 12 and 2 p.m., Lubeznik Center for the Arts will be having their family pop-up day again at, this time it'll be at Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church, 3007 Ohio Street. It's a family-friendly event, kid-friendly. There'll be food and drink, mostly pizza, I think. But everyone's encouraged to come out and learn some art techniques. Usually last time I think they had like pipe cleaners and foam, and they were able to interact and do whatever they came up with. So it's pretty good things also in the Fourth Ward. So thank you.
Okay, any other council comments? I have one comment, and I know that the street sign has been up, I think, for a month or so, but I just want to congratulate Councilman Tim Beatry for getting his name up in lights on that street sign just north of the...
It's actually an alley.
Is that one of the alley? How about a walkway? That sounds better, doesn't it?
I'm going to let you vacate that alley.
Yeah. Only if he pays for it. But, no, I just want to congratulate you, Tim, on that. I mean, I know you did an extraordinary amount of work on Art Space, and, I haven't had time to, talk about it at a council meeting, but I just want to, thank you very much for all you did. I know your heart was into it to get that thing, done, and that was a very big project, and really brought downtown back to life, and just wanted to congratulate you on the, the notoriety of the street sign, and it's well deserved. So, okay. With that being said, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Hamilton, second by Councilman Dabney. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Meeting's adjourned.